This series of live events is organized by Eirini Counseling, powered by Every Nation Church Malaysia. For the benefit of those who may be your first time joining in, Eirini Counseling is a non-profit counseling and mental health service for the community regardless of religion, ethnicity, social and economic status. We provide professional counseling and therapy for individuals, couples, and families. So the objective of this heart-to-heart series of talks centralize on mental health well-being with the goal to provide support and care through awareness and sharing of life experiences from professionals in the field of mental health, as well as individuals who are going through similar challenges in this trying time. As we are encountering the increased number of cases of suicides and mental health conditions throughout the nation, we believe that it is timely for us to create this avenue to cater to the needs of the community. So we hope that you'll be blessed and encouraged by the sharing as we gain practical insights on how we can manage our mental health and well-being in this season as we brave through this storm. All right. So without further delay, allow me to briefly introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Eugene, on the topic, the simple solution to being healthy and active 365. So Dr. Eugene is a psychiatrist and medical lecturer from UPM. Besides that, he is also an ACT practitioner who has introduced his therapeutic model in his psychiatric practice. So I will leave the rest for Dr. Eugene to explain what he does in a more layman term. Yeah. Should you have any questions, do post your questions on the chat box, this time, chat box, and let's make this time as interactive as possible. Also, if you would like to just switch on your camera for some interaction, please feel free to do so, and that will be a form of encouragement. And post your comment and also your questions, yeah, in the chat box. So over to you, Dr. Eugene.
Right. Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. Before I start, some of you might be wondering why in the world is a psychiatrist talking about exercise and lifestyle and all these things. I think that warrants a bit of an explanation. I'm a psychiatrist by profession, but I actually have a special interest in two things. ACT is actually one of the therapies I practice, and I also have another special interest in sports. I'm actually a very active athlete, and as you can see in the background there, I purposely choose that tonight because that is Putrajaya, and it's one of my favorite training spots, and I've been away from it for more than a year. I really do miss going back there, but I can't go back there to train. But that aside, so I actually somewhat subspecialize in the area of sports psychiatry, which means I deal with athletes, and I also look at sports as a mean of therapy for mental health. So it's not just to make sure you're physically healthy. When someone do sports, it actually also helps them improve their mental health. And at the same time, it can even be used as some of the treatments with mental conditions that we have, such as depression and anxiety. As such, one of the things that we really emphasize in sports psychiatry is that do exercise. Exercise is something we could prescribe and give to our patients, our clients, or even lay persons or our population, because it does have a contributing factor relating to mental health. And when Elaine approached me to give a talk, I said, let's do something different now. Don't everyone every day they say depression, anxiety, stress, and some even say suicide. Let's do something different. Let's not touch those topics. Let's talk on something I like, and at the same time, it's something different from what you all would usually be exposed to when we talk about mental health. I am hoping to keep this session as informal as possible. So throughout the session, if you have questions, you have ideas, just pause the video or whatever, give in your comment, ask me questions, feel free to do so. It shouldn't be too rigid and so. All right, let me just share my things. I am keeping the participant window open so I can see you all. If you all, if you want to raise your hands to say anything, and by all means go ahead and do so. So I'm going to talk about something about behavior. And this is what we call the New Year resolution idea. And this is something I think most of us are familiar with. December 31st, 12 midnight come, it becomes 1st of January. It's the new year. Everyone will be pressured by social media. What's your New Year resolution? What are you going to do? What's going to be new for the year? What should we try? More often than not, top on that list, man. I want to exercise more. I want to have six pack. I want to lose weight. I want to go ahead and be the world next athlete, so on and so forth. The similar resolution that all of us here will probably make in one form or another. More often than not, it would come in a form of I need to be fit, slim, probably fast if you're joining races, and I need to be in this very optimal idea of a person that I should be. And then what comes next is maybe days, maybe weeks, intense all-out training. Sign up for a gym membership. Uh, Go do a training plan. Start dieting, only eating salads 3 times a day. Go for extreme diet fads, keto diet, or any other KFC diet, any famous diets and all these things. Just go all out in it, and that tends to last days, weeks, for some maybe months. I would say by the time mid-year, June, July, most of the time these resolutions will just fade off already. They take on a different intensity. We no longer keep that resolution. And for a lot of people, it would also mean that they essentially just stop keeping to it. They no longer exercise as what they planned and set up on the 1st of January. Okay. How many of you could relate with that? How many of you could relate to this idea? And even if we don't put it at New Year, how many of you remember distinctly you have phases where I want to do exercise or I want to keep exercising for a certain period of time, and then you just stop or you cut down your intensity already? It's no longer what you had expected at the very beginning. Can I have a quick raise? And I have one hand raised up there. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm seeing a few already. Okay, so yes, so this is not new. I'm asking you to raise hand because this is not new. This is something all of us goes through. For some, eventually, they plan it for this year, they do it for the next year. Maybe they just stop altogether already. It's just no longer something that they care. And eventually, we become the sloth. Not to say that you become fat or unfit, you just stop becoming inactive. You just stop trying to strive to do any form of physical activities because it's no longer number one on the priority until the next season comes into play, and then we have the same thoughts. We go through the same cycle again. Okay, this thing actually has been studied many years ago already. People have often looked into the idea of why people don't remain active or remain physically consistently. The words that you see on the screen now are very common reasons why people stop exercising or stop becoming active physically. This was actually taken from a paper in the 1960s or 1970s. There is a paper as recent as 2 or 3 years, and they found the same reason that people always give when they stop being active. They're either too busy, work or personal life gets caught up. They're feeling no motivation, feeling too lazy. They might feel that whatever underlying conditions or illness they have is too much of a bother. They're too ill to go ahead. Or they find that the plan they've set up to stick with, the plan of wanting to be physical that they try to go out with, is too hard to understand, too hard to keep up. And I'm just not as good as I need to be. And another factor that sometimes we don't hear about it, but it's actually a very common factor. It's too lonely. I go to the gym on my own all the time. I go and do workout on my own all the time. It's just lonely and boring. And coupled together all of these factors, it will creep into your mind. You keep thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and then we lead to where we are in the June season really, where we just stop exercising, when we stop being physically active. And this is interesting because we know about these reasons many years already. In the 1960s, 1970s, studies have been shown and all these things. But every few years, the world organizations, WHO, or even any other health or national health organizations, keep telling you you need to exercise, keep telling you you need to be physically active to be healthy. The numbers persistently increase. In fact, when I was just in medical school, the numbers was like, oh, you must exercise half an hour 3 times a week kind of thing. Now you look the latest one, I didn't put it here, but it's so confusing. You need to have this range of moderate exercise, you need to have this range of light exercise, you need to have this range of heavy exercise of so many number of minutes and all these things. it essentially fulfills what we say in the reason there, too hard to understand. And if I give those numbers to you as a doctor, I think you need to lose weight. You need to do so and so numbers of exercise per day, per week, and all these things. You're not going to do it because the too hard to understand reason is going to pop in there. And it's a common thing. Nobody ever does what the doctor says when they ask the patient, please go and exercise. Okay. And I can give you another reason that's similar to that. Have any of you have experienced going to a physio before? You have an injury or you have a body ache, you go to a physio. No? No? Anyone? No volunteers? No. Okay. So someone raise their hands. How often the time when you go to the physio, you follow the physio's instructions religiously? I can put up my hand. Number one, I'll tell you every time they tell me, do homework, do make sure you exercise, strengthen your hand. Okay, I'll do it for 2 days. I see them 2 weeks later and I tell them, yeah, I do it for 2 weeks every day. Every single time I have an injury, every time I go to a physio, that's always the thing that happens. And I would be very sure majority of you all who raise up the hand would have a similar experience. And if you look back, if you start thinking, the same reasons is going to pop by again. So, and the reason why I brought up about this physio, the reason why I brought up this doctor idea is that it's not that we have a struggle in keeping our resolution. It's not that we have problems continuing to be exercised. We want that, just like the physio, just like what the doctor advised. We want to do it. We know it's important to us, but we have certain intrinsic factors inside us that actually makes it difficult. It kind of shapes our behavior, or to put it mildly. And this is where I would want to bring you all to this idea of your mind, your brain. Have any of you, when you are awake, is able not to think of anything? Have a blank mind? Anyone raise up your hands? Anyone have a blank mind that doesn't think of anything? Hendrik, I'm assuming that your hand was not lowered since just now. Okay, RN has raised his hand or her hand. Are you able to ever have a blank mind and not think of anything, RN? Or is that a change? Okay, so I assuming nobody raised up their hands. I think I have something in the chat. I would have thought too boring could be one of the reasons, yes. So RN says, yes, when I'm cleaning my house. When you're cleaning your house, you're focusing on cleaning. Your thoughts are all on the cleaning. But have you ever been able to have an empty mind? Your mind's not telling you, I'm doing the vacuum now. Your mind's not telling you, I'm mopping now. Nope, can't. And this is one of the reasons our mind actually doesn't shut up. It's a friend. It's a friend to us. It talks to us all the time. It tells us all the time. Even as you all are sitting there listening to me now, your mind is ongoing, telling you, what do I feel about this doctor? What do I feel about this guy talking? Am I relating to what he's saying? Your mind just goes on and on and on. It doesn't stop unless you are asleep. And of course, sometimes we say that, maybe when you're asleep, you're also dreaming. So your mind's also talking to you through dreams. And the thing about the mind is that it's a very nice friend of us. If you don't have a mind, we wouldn't be who we are. But it's also an overly friendly mind. Its role is to do one thing only, to make sure that we are alive, to make sure we could pass on our genes, reproduce, and be alive until we can reproduce, and then remain alive for the rest of it. What I mean by this is that your mind is very good at telling you you need to breathe. It's very good at telling you you need to eat. It's also very good at pointing out to you problems, either problems from the past that you have experienced or potential problems that might happen in the future. So one example for this is that when you choose to go and exercise and your mind tells you, hey, today cloudy lah, about to rain, thunderstorm might hit you and you might die from a lightning, go back to bed and sleep lah. Lightning is going to hit you. Your mind might tell you something like that. Your mind might even tell you while you exercise, this is too hard. This is too difficult. I don't want to do it anymore. Don't bother doing exercise again. So on and so forth. The reason why your mind tells you this is not because your mind is lazy or unmotivated, but it's trying to tell you that so that you don't suffer, so that you don't experience pain, so that you don't experience difficult emotions. And like it or not, being physically active, doing exercise is actually a painful thing. Nobody likes it when you can't breathe. Nobody likes it when your muscles are sore. Nobody likes it, when you're sweating and all very disgusting. And you don't even look appealing for the opposite sex, and your mind is telling you you don't look appealing, you're not going to reproduce. Not good. Not good at all. Exercise is always something bad. Your mind will always chatter and chatter and chatter. Most of us are aware of this. Most of us are aware with this thing that goes on in our mind. What do you do when your mind does tell you something like that? What would you usually do? Your mind tells you, I'm lazy today, I don't want to exercise today, so on and so forth. What would you all do? Can I get some suggestion? No excuse. So you try to fight it. No excuse. I'm not listening to my mind. Okay, so that's one. You have to will your mind. I'm going to force you to will your mind. I don't want to lie on my mind. I'm going to go ahead and exercise. Okay? Anyone else? If it's about exercise, I'll listen to mind that I'm too lazy or just give in. Okay, this one, last one, confirm lah. Listen, give in, too lazy, that's it. Focus on the after effect. Focus on the nice feel I'm going to get. But your mind is telling you, now I don't want to do. Now I don't want to do. Think of nice nasi lemak. That's a very useful one. I do that sometimes. It makes me more hungry when I exercise, actually. But okay, get out of my mind. Okay, leave your mind. Take a rest, but go on and all these things. Okay, so we have many reasons. Some might be work. Some might be useful for certain times. Majority of time, there is one simple outcome that you all might be familiar with. And if you all were listening to me having the church dialogue 2 weeks ago, this is where I'm going to repeat the same thing again. So I just want to point out again, just ignore it if you're already aware of it. I want to try a little experiment here. Can you all don't think of a pink elephant? Try as hard as you can to tell your mind not to think of a pink elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. Tell your mind to shut up. Don't think of a pink elephant. Don't bring in a pink elephant. Someone very fast already say cannot already. No, counting numbers. Okay. But does the pink elephant pops up as you fight it off? No. Okay. So yeah, I see your poster already think of pink elephant. Okay. And the same thing. It's the same thing with all the exercise, the reasons why we exercise. Our mind is very useful in telling us things not to do to protect us. Our mind is very useful to pick up all those things because they want us to be safe, it wants us to be comfortable. The problem is we ourselves have problem asking our mind to shut up. Just like the pink elephant, if I tell my mind, shut up, don't listen, don't tell me this, I'm going to do the exercise, I'm not going to listen to you, I'm going to will you to go away, more often than not, it's like the pink elephant. We will struggle very hard, but very little results comes of it because our mind won't listen to us, and trying to control it often is very difficult. And if we keep consistently forced to try to control it, usually what the results was, we give up lah, or we just let it. Could we try not to reason with our mind? We can try. So we go back to the pink elephant. Could you tell your mind, reason in your mind, I don't need to listen to you. I don't want to think of a pink elephant. Maybe I think of a gray elephant, or maybe I think of other colors. You could try. And all I'm going to do is just tell you, don't think of pink elephant. Could you do that? Yeah, this would be specifically for Yvonne, who just asked me the question. Could you try to reason with your mind not to think of a pink elephant while we're talking about a pink elephant here? Not at all. Okay, she shake her head already. Essentially, it's a very, very difficult thing. It's very, very difficult to tell our mind other ways. I know popular psychology tend to tell you, I just think positive, just will your mind to do it. Very often, it's actually very difficult because of this idea that our mind has no delete button, and our mind it's a friend that doesn't listen to us. It wants us to listen to it, but it doesn't listen to us. Okay, so knowing that, now you could see why all those reasons comes into play earlier, the reasons that we talk about here. Too busy, too lazy, too ill, too hard to understand, too lonely, and all these things. All these reasons pop up because your mind is trying to protect you or to help you out as a very friendly friend, telling you things because it's trying to point out to you exercise is painful, uncomfortable. These are some of the reasons why you shouldn't be exercising. You hear your mind tell you that often enough, you're gonna believe it, you're gonna give into it, and that's when we drop out of our exercises. That's how we drop out of on being continuing to exercise. And then there's also the other thing that we sometimes do. let's just wait for the right time. Let's just wait for the right motivation. Let's just wait until everything is right. The stars are aligned, only we go and do exercise. Because we want to wait until our mind tells us it's safe to do it. Chances of that happening, it's very, very low. Once in the blue moon thing. Sooner or later you get bored of waiting. You might just, you don't want to do it anymore. Telling this idea to you all first that the mind doesn't shut up. And it means well, but often it doesn't have good consequences. What then can we do so that our behavior of exercising is continuous? We continue keeping to our resolution, we continue keeping to the diet or exercise things that we want to do. What I usually would try to say is consider why you want to exercise first. Ask yourself, when you make the resolution, why is exercise important? Why is being physically active important for myself? Think very clearly for that reason first. But when you think of that reason, avoid the following. Don't tell yourself, I want to exercise to remain happy or stress-free. Don't put it as an emotional description. The reason for that is emotions goes roller coaster. You cannot be happy all the time. You cannot be stress-free all the time. It doesn't happen. So avoid using that rule number one. Rule number two, don't set the why reason as I want to exercise to improve certain things. I want to exercise to improve my stamina. I want to exercise to improve my timing. Because what happens when you reach that timing or that stamina? What happens when you reach that? What's going to happen after that? Nothing else already, no more reason already. You want to stop exercising. What happens when you can't reach that why? Then your mind telling you this is too painful already, we have to stop already. So don't choose to exercise because you want to improve a specific thing. Don't choose to exercise to be healthy. For a very simple reason. Healthy is good. We all want to be healthy. But it's so vague that sooner or later you're gonna start asking what does healthy means? Eating a junk food at the middle of the night at 12 o'clock because I'm extremely stressed is actually a form of healthy self-care. Losing weight drastically, 5-6 kg per week is supposed to be healthy because I'm losing weight, but it's so drastic it can become problematic for you. So choosing to exercise to be healthy can be a very, very vague reason or idea. And very soon when you choose things like this, your mind's going to start telling you things again. And last but not least, don't choose to exercise to have a great body. You can plan to reach certain targets. You can plan to, I want to have a six-pack. I want to have bigger muscles. That's planning. But your overall goal, why you choose to exercise, shouldn't be to have a great body. And these are not things that I actually brought up, think of, popular psychology kind of thing. These are things that I actually use when I work with athletes. I don't tell my athletes when we work with them, I don't actually tell them, you set your goal to win this race. So you set your goal to win this race, what happens when the race ends? You got no other things to aim for. You don't choose to become an athlete to be the best of your best because we don't know what best is the best. You don't choose to be an athlete to have a great body because great body doesn't usually translate to great performance. Find of a very good reason why you actually want to be an athlete in this sports. And it's the same for your find a reason why you want to exercise, but make sure that reason doesn't fulfill any of this. Some examples of why I want to exercise so that I could inspire other people. And at the same time, I'd be inspired by other sports people. I like to see other people exercise, and I also want to inspire other people to exercise just like me. One possible example. I want to choose to exercise so that I can get rid or keep my chronic illness condition in check. I want to keep my diabetes in check. I don't want to be plagued by diabetes. I want to choose to exercise so that I can live long enough to spend time with my kids, my grandchildren, so on and so forth. Of course, this reason could vary individually for you all. Find that reason why first. And there's a reason, there's a purpose to this. When you are able to identify a good why you want to exercise, it can be used to guide you as you go along. What I mean by guiding means it could use to guide you on whether should you push hard in this exercise today, or should you push go easy on this exercise. Should you take a break today? Maybe because there are other things that's important. Let's say today work is very busy, so I'm going to choose not to exercise. But I know in the longer run, if I keep my sights at why I start to exercise, that goal that I talk about, in the longer run, I will always keep track of it. So having that insight and set at the very beginning of why you want to exercise, it kind of helps us guide to what we want to do. And now that we have set the reason why, then we can break it down to further smaller goals. Smaller goals is in order to reach that why, what do I need to do? Maybe I need to complete this race. Maybe I need to lose weight. Maybe I need to reach a certain speed or timing. Maybe I need to get a certain special task finished, so on and so forth. Those goals you can have multiple goals, as long as all the goals are directed towards that why that we talked about just now. And how do you set goals is you need to make sure your goals are set up in this way. It has to be very specific. So I want to finish a race. I want to go to the gym 3 times a day, 3 times a week, not 3 times a day. So it has to be very specific. It has to be motivated by the why that we talk about. It has to be something attainable and realistic. So don't choose something like I want to be represent the country to be an Olympic when you have never even picked up that sport before. It has to be something that you yourself, in your capacity, you can reach it. It's realistic. And it has to be time specific. I want to try to aim for this goal in this next 3 months. I want to try to aim for this goal in the next 1 month, 6 months. So you kind of set up the time frame of that goal already. And that goal is guided by the why you talk about. So it kind of keeps everything in perspective. And you will always be focused on that goal because you want to try to reach that why that we talk about there. Instead of just I want to exercise to lose weight, it becomes much bigger, much more motivating interest. Now I want you to see this picture. So earlier we talked about why. So imagine why as a far away guidance kind of thing, and then we talk about setting goals. Now imagine if you're that little kid there at that bottom of the door. How would you all feel? If I would tell you your why or your goal is at the top of the stairs and you're that little kid at the bottom, how would you all feel? Daunting. Okay, daunting. I can give you all a few more answers. Scary, impossible. How am I going to do it? Doubtful. Your mind will start telling you already it's too dangerous. You might fall down, you might injure. Wow, when am I going to reach the top? Lucy actually mentioned that. So on and so forth. And often, the reason why we don't continue with the sports or the resolution we set up is because we set up the goal, we set up the why, and we set the goals. But we look at it as such a big picture, just like that little kid looking at the bottom of the stairs. It becomes a very scary, very demotivating thing. Now, what if I switch this perspective then? What if you were to just look at that? How would you all feel? 3 steps in front of you, just like that. You're not looking at the big steps, you're not looking at the end, just those 3 steps. Suddenly, it becomes easier. Suddenly, it becomes something that is more achievable. And this is where I want to highlight again. Earlier, we talked about smart goals. Your smart goals should be something like this. It should be set such that it gives you this feeling of something small and achievable that you can do. All right. It shouldn't be something that go all the way. And yes, you once said that we need to cajole our mind, to cudgel our mind. I agree. In a way, in order to keep all of this, you need to set the why as your main compass or as your main light post that's going to guide you towards that. You want to go towards it. But along the way to go towards this, small steps, small goals, expect failures. If you're that little kid trying to climb this stairs, you will inevitably slip. You will inevitably have 1 or 2 steps forward. But it's okay. Focus back on those 3, 4 steps in front and just keep going and going. Sooner or later, you're going to reach at that point. Sooner or later, you're going to hit towards the top. But when you go approach it from this way in small bite sizes and small goals, it's going to be more manageable. Okay. And this is where I want to highlight one thing that for any of you to, in order to keep at this resolution, to keep consistency, tell yourself this consistency is 70%. Allow yourself room for up to 30% or even 40% of not actually even doing any of the workouts. Allow yourself that 30-40% to fail, to feel shitty, to get caught up with by work, to just don't want to do exercise kind of thing. Allow yourself that, knowing at the end of the day, as long as you keep the why in check, as long as you have your goals that you kind of look around, check in on it, doing it consistently 70% of the time instead of 100% all the time, it's going to give you room. It's going to give you room for failure. It's going to give you room to fall back. It's going to give you room to make mistakes. And it's also going to give you room so that you don't beat yourself up when you don't do it. Most of the time when we set the idea of resolution, when we want to do exercise, we must 100% every day, that 3 times a week, no failure, no room for failure. That's the one that's very quickly going to tell our mind to stop non-stop already. So if you allow yourself that 70%, you're going to be able to be more consistent. And consistent is key. That's why there's a picture of key there. When I work with the athletes, I would tell them that my goal here is not to tell you to get your fastest time, not to get you to go the fastest that you can. My goal here is to make sure that you are consistently training for 70% of the time so that your fitness is good enough during the race and you can perform well. I'm not even going to tell you I need you to train consistently 100%. My goal here is to help you work so that you can train 70% consistently with your coach. And often this 70% consistency translate to performance. And if it works for elite athletes, it's going to work for you also. All right. And whatever you do, whatever you plan, put varieties. Make sure you don't do the same thing over and over again. Change your workout, change your exercise, do different workouts, put it in various different things so that your mind doesn't have the chance of getting bored, so that your mind doesn't have the same one excuse given for today. Today, no motivation to do this because you don't like this workout. The next day, if you're doing a different workout, your mind don't have the chance to tell you that same excuse again. The mind don't have the same chance to do it. So make sure it's a variety of exercise. And remember, it's not the exercise that you do, is whatever you do 70% consistently, which is going to bring you towards the why that you planned along at the very beginning. Right? And then keep track. Of course, we like to feel good. We're humans, so we kind of need to tell our mind a reason why we want to do it. Measure yourself once in a while. Measure your weight once every month. If you're going to aim for a particular, you know, muscular build or race and all these things, measure yourself consistently, but not so consistent that every day. Do it like once a month, once every few months. That would be useful. Like in my it's actually difficult for me to do this now, but what I used to do to keep consistent is I always have a race every 3 months, because every 3 months I'm measuring my performance, and during that 3 months I have that 70 consistency to make sure that I actually improve based on what the why I actually do for. Right. And before I end, as the very last one, if you were to just sum up all of that to even smaller bits, sometimes in order to exercise, the beginning is always the hardest. Not once you go into the exercise, it's not easy. It's always easy. So what I'll do is I'll wake up. Today very lazy lah. Never mind lah. I just put on my clothes first. Think of the why. Think of the why. And then go up to the door. I'm too lazy lah. Let's go back and sleep. Okay, forget it. Next day, try again. Put out the clothes. Go out the door. Think of the why. Think of the why. Just go up to the car. Think of the why. I know I'm feeling lazy. I know my mind's telling me. Just go to the spot where I need to do training. Do that often enough at the beginning. Once you start actually exercising, all of it comes in flow. It just flows in very easily already. So you no longer listen to your mind talking already. Often it's just the beginning part, and you just need to break it down to small steps. Try and try and try, much like that little kid at the stairs. And then the whole session of the workout will come out into play. All right. So with that, I'm just gonna end what I want to talk about tonight. I'm gonna leave it to questions.
All right. Thank you for the very quick and also very brief, but yet quite powerful for us to kind of have something to begin with. Yeah. So we have question is that due to the lockdown and restrictions, yeah, there are many who are experiencing the drastic change from motivated. They used to be motivated, yeah, and with the life purpose to be, doing things that they will be doing maybe in their career or maybe in the college, and from that change to be lack of motivation or even procrastination, and it's a decline in significance. Will they become clinically depressed? And what can they do about it if the motivation is almost to non-existence?
Mm. I would say no. So if you go back to that same analogy, I talk about the reason why. Often when we push ourselves, often when we motivate ourselves in our life, we tend to fix on those, the rules I talk about. It has to be a very specific, I must do this project, I must be happy all the time, I must be stress-free all the time, that kind of thing. And if we are driven by that, and like now the situation where it's so uncertain and keep changing, that's where we start feeling distressful because this is something we no longer can do. This it's just impossible. So I would say that to minimize that distressful feeling, relook at why you're actually doing all of this in a deeper reflection. What actually inspires me? What actually pushes me to want to do all of this? Is there a deeper meaning behind it? And then reset your goals based on that meaning or what's important. So reset and relook at it. So again, we do all of this, there's often a deeper meaning behind it, and that meaning drives us. It's just that often we don't actually sit down and think about the why. We only think of all the goals, and we only think that the goal is everything. But going into the deeper reflection, reflecting through it, there's often the bigger ones, and then you can reset the goals to make it workable during this time of uncertainties. Problem is if you get stuck in that idea, stuck with the idea that I cannot be anything else, my identity is gone without this particular goal being achieved. And I would say that stuck feeling will cause distress. I'm not going to go all the way to say compulsory will develop a psychiatric condition. It's not going to, it's not you compulsory. If you get stuck, you will develop depression, anxiety, so on and so forth. There is a possibility, but that severity can range. It could be a very uncomfortable, very stressful kind of distress, all the way to a condition. So I would sum it up more as if you're not flexible enough to kind of change that goal, you will feel stuck. And that feeling of stuck can cause you to be very, very uncomfortable and sometimes to the point of actually having a what we call mental condition or mental illness.
So if that is the case for for individuals who are going through that, unable to go through the unstuck period and whatnot,
Yeah.
what then can the
So
individuals do
okay.
then?
Go back
If
and reflect on the
if
why that we talked about just now. Reflect back on that why and look at it. If you find yourself unable to do so, um, try to find someone to talk about it, to go through someone who's familiar with looking at purpose or what drives you and all this. Elaine and the counselors in Eirini are experienced and they could actually assist you. Even psychologists, even psychiatrists, most of us have some basic training to kind of help you guide you. It's not always about medication. It's not always about therapy. Sometimes it's just a simple have a chat, kind of guide you kind of thing. And maybe that could be useful. Or even approach some of the pastors around. Like they are well trained in the pastoral work to be able to kind of help you refine purpose also.
Okay, so basically, if we are not able to unstuck that ourselves, we probably really need to go and reach out, yeah, to have a sounding board, to have someone who can help us through, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, secondly, what can individuals do when they are experiencing anxiety attacks? Yeah, it's something that they cannot control, or they're constantly feeling anxious and then go into the freeze mode. Will exercise help and whatnot?
Okay. This is tricky one. If I'm the talking from my a scientist head, if I put on myself as a scientist, I will tell you no. Evidence has said that exercise doesn't really help with anxiety, and there's a very good explanation behind it. Think about it. When you exercise, even though if you're lifting weight or you're running and all this, what happens? You sweat, your heart beats fast. you become breathless. All of those physical symptoms that you have is actually very similar to having someone who's actually having a panic. So it's been postulated when you actually do that, sometimes exercise kind of makes you feel more anxious because you get reminded about the fear. Exercise is very good for depression. It's very good for stress. It does what we call act a bit like an antidepressant, minus the chemicals. For anxiety, not so much. However, even though the evidence says that, for some people they find that when they exercise, they are able to kind of process the things that they are stuck with, and because they are able to process the things that they are stuck with, they don't get as anxious as always. Because usually when they get anxious, it's because they're stuck with something. They're so fearful of that stuck that they develop the symptoms. So when they exercise, they're able to process it. Moving on forward, they will be less anxious. So there are people who find it useful in that sense. I don't prescribe. I actually prescribe exercise in my clinical practice for my patients. I will tell them, I literally work out with them an exercise plan, but I don't do it for anxiety patients. I actually don't do it because of that reason that I just explained. What can they do when they are actually having anxious? There are many techniques and ways you can try. Uh, I know some people say breathing works, and some people, but I'm not a fan of it because I find that breathing, it's easy to breathe to relax when you're calm, not so easy to breathe to relax when you are anxious. I find that the grounding technique works very well as an emergency technique. Just the all you can do is just Google how to do grounding. There's many forms of it. I find that grounding techniques work much better as an emergency method to actually come out of the fearfulness of grounding. And if you go back to the one that you talked about freezing, so what I do is, let's say if I need to give public speech or I go for an exam and I'm extremely nervous, I actually will freeze up. What I do for my own grounding is I will actually sit on my hands and I feel the weight of my hip bones pressing down my hands and I focus on that feeling. So that's grounding. That's a form of grounding. I focus on that sensation and it relax. It when by shifting that focus and moving away from the thing that I'm stuck with, I can unrelease and I can move on. This is a technique I kind of teach some of my medical students also. But I'm not saying that that's a magic bullet lah. Go Google. There are many ways of doing grounding. Find one that works for you if you experience panic. Okay, and of course, I kind of need, as a psychiatrist, I also need to highlight that if your panic is so disturbing, it causes you so much problem, come and see a psychiatrist. We have medications and we have ways of actually working with it. This is when it becomes too much problem. It becomes too problematic.
Okay. All right. There's one related to exercise is good for your mental health. Yeah. How then do you encourage someone who is going through depression to pick up exercise? Yeah. And when all they want to do is just to lay in bed and social distancing is not helping,
Mm.
how do you then attend to that?
Okay. I would say COVID exercise and COVID is difficult outdoors. That's definitely true. But we, much like the variety slides I talked about, we kind of work around to see what's the variety that works best for that client of mine who's actually experiencing depression. Depression, yes, is debilitating. It does cause some people to just want to stay in bed. But more often than not, by the time they come and see me, there is this spark there already. I know I'm having depression. I know I cannot get out of bed, but I want it to be different. I want to do something about it. That spark is already there. And I usually work on that spark and say, look, you have really come and see me. You want to do something about it. Do you want to consider physical activity? It will probably help with whatever treatment we're giving you. That's something I will point out to them. Because I more often than not, by the time someone comes and see me, they would have tried many things already. They would have tried talking to people, they would have tried to um, sleep it over, they would try to just ignore it, and it would have really caused a lot of problems. So by the time you come see me, the spark is already there already. And then I work on that. I remind them about that. And then we say, why not give it a try? The types of physical activities, this is not exercise. The type of physical activities is individualized. We kind of arrange to see what they can do. And of course, I don't prescribe it in such a way that immediately go run intensively 5 km. I actually don't do that. We kind of work with how much are they willing to do it. We highlight to them that the mind's going to talk to them. The mind's going to tell them they cannot do it. I want them to try step by step. Do this first. Do one step first. If you can't do it, screw it, forget it, go back to bed, lay in bed, try again next day. Try again the third day. Try again the fourth day. It's kind of like a test to push forward further and further and further and further. So far, most of them can do, and I've never I've never seen a client who has difficulty trying to pick it up. I have clients who remain moderately to severely depressed. That means they still have that no motivation, but they can do the exercise, and they do report a feeling of well-being once they start getting it done. And it also harks back to that last statement I said just now. Often it's the beginning that's difficult. Once they start going, once you start the engine moving, usually being active is something that everyone can do.
What if that is when they come and see you? They have some form of like an authority figure to go to, like a doctor telling me. But if like, in practical wise, like our family members or our friends who are seemingly, keep on in that state, yeah, what would be helpful for us?
So in that sense, actually, I think the same principles would work. They are feeling horrible. They are feeling down. They are very stuck. But more often than not, it's not something they want to be in there. It's just that they have no way of coming out with it. Highlight that to them. Highlight that to them. Look, you have already tried sleeping over. You have already tried talking. You already tried whatever you have tried. Why don't you give this a try? Let's just, put on the shoes tomorrow first. And if you feel shitty, go back to bed. Next day again, put on the shoes, let's go out the door. If you feel horrible, go back to bed. That's third day, try again, try again. Just keep trying kind of, step by step. And then gradually, as they get more active, they should be able to see something. But it's a matter of pointing out to them, you have already tried the other things, doesn't work, why not give this a try? And then step by step, it would still works. It would still be the same approach.
Yeah, so it's going to be a long journey of encouraging and keep on
Uh, I,
persistent.
I would say no. I would say more often than not, when you highlight to them and then they try, usually you should get somewhere. But I would also want to point out that if you're not getting anywhere, you are struggling to get the person to actually do any of this, it is maybe time to bring them to see a professional. Then they might need other forms of management. And because keeping in mind, while exercise is good, while I do use it as part of management, it's not a one size fit all, or it's not going to solve every depression and anxiety. We do still need to use the variety of techniques and tools that we have, including medications if necessary.
Yeah. All right. So now we take the time for the questions from the floor. Yeah, for whoever that may have question. So there's one here from Yvonne. It says, "Is cabin fever real or my imagination?"
Cabin fever was made famous by some of the Hollywood movie magic. So I wouldn't say it's entirely real, but I can say that if you spend a lot of time with your mind and you're not aware of what your mind keeps telling you and you just keep listening to your mind, that over friendly chatter that goes on and on and on, it's a bit like Alice in Wonderland. You go down the rabbit hole because you just listen over and over again. And just like the rabbit hole, it can bring you to places that you might not be comfortable. Okay? So it's not about your mind talking nonstop. It's more of the mind talking nonstop, and you actually follow your mind continuously. That tends to happen when you are persistently stuck in a isolated socially, being stuck in a room, so on and so forth. And that's where it's gonna bring you down the rabbit hole and cause uncomfortableness. So and that's what is traditionally believed to cause what they call cabin fever. And this is, you don't actually even to be alone to experience that. Imagine if you stay with like a couple, two of you in the same place, day in day out, see each other, day in day out, you are listening to your mind and only your partner. Same thing could happen also. Quick solution to it is to again have variety in the life. Do try to mix and match things and all these things. Uh, while breaking SOP is not recommended, but there are creative ways to kind of work around things. So like for myself, I kind of need to exercise to clear my mind sometimes. I can't do that now, can? So I run around in circles around my dining hall table. My wife and my neighbor thinks I actually gone cuckoo, but I told them that they actually drowns me. So yeah, you kind of find ways to go around with it lah. And just to make sure that I don't get caught up, I don't go down the rabbit hole that is the mind chattering nonstop.
Okay, any more questions from the floor? And you mentioned that, you know, we need to measure ourselves every once in a while. But if I measure myself, right, I'll constantly feel bad about it and very sad about it.
Yeah. So and that's one of the reasons I'm guessing you're gonna measure yourself based on physical parameters, or your either your weight or your body shape and all these things. And that's why I said at the why that don't put body figure as the main thing. That's often something that not most of us can't. I get depressed when I keep losing my weight. I since MCO started, I put on a significant amount of weight, and my wife pretty much hear me complain every time I step on the scale. Yeah, I'm no longer that very fit athlete that used to race 3 years ago. Mind you, 3 years ago, and I'm stuck with that figure. Even my mind keeps reminding me, why are you not that same figure? And so it's not easy to do it. Even I'm been practicing all this for a while already. I am still comfortable to those things, but I remind myself, I catch myself saying that I'm measuring myself based on that, and that usually is not useful or feasible or possible. Okay.
Okay.
You want to mention body measurement is a smart goal? Yes, it is if you put it as a small targeted goal in order to reach the why. Yes, it can be used in that sense. So if I want to lose 3 kg so that I can hit that why better, I will use it. So it really depends on the context. Set set body measurements as a smart goal, as a small step towards the why, but not as the main why. That's the difference there. Okay.
One question from Lucy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to read this out. Does your counseling involve the way you talk to yourself? Do you view depression, mental illness as a chemical brain reaction or more traumatic habitual sign? What are the benefits of exercising to mind chattering? I don't do counseling actually. I do therapy, but it's a bit different. The way I talk to myself, I no, my therapy actually involved a lot about being aware about your experiences you have with your mind, being aware with the experiences on how you interact with the world. So you would notice me saying a lot of these kind of things, even this conversation. I start pointing out to you, being aware of how your mind talks, being aware of the decision and choices you make. So it's a lot about all this awareness and how you could modify it when you are more aware. A lot of time we don't train ourselves to become aware of this, and that results with being going into autopilot, or that results us continuing being stuck in that situation we are not comfortable with. So that's what I do. It is I do use language to kind of convey the message, but it's not about self-talking. It's more about being aware, and I think everyone here can do that also. Do I view mental illness as a chemical brain reaction, traumatic self-talk that makes the mind sick? I have a slightly more radical view. I have multiple views of mental illness. If I put on my scientist hat, if I put on the scientist hat I mentioned a few times, I would say that yeah, there's going to be brain changes, chemical changes. It's a very simplistic manner of explaining it from a physical context that some people feel more comfortable. I can also explain it using evolution. You have heard me talk about that just now, uh, where I tell you that your mind is telling you to do a few things. You need to reproduce, to find a mate, to do that. You can use that evolution to explain. And mental illness is just a way of extreme of actually using that as evolution. Um, I would also say that your situation, your environment will also shape some of your experiences, and how that experiences goes about will shape how your mind will talk to you also. So uh, essentially what I'm trying to say here is there's no easy, simple yes or no answer to that particular question. I don't view mental illness as a black and white thing. I view it as a huge, huge spectrum, but I have a preferred way of explaining it using the therapy I'm trained in. So I'm very comfortable in telling people it's about being stuck in this situation. It's about how your mind tells you this. I prefer to do that because it's more relatable. But if I'm going to have that conversation with another doctor, I'll probably tell them, oh yeah, there's this chemical that's imbalanced, so on and so forth. If I'm going to have a conversation with someone who is more spiritual, then we will talk maybe the Christians, the holy books would look at it differently. I kind of changed it so that as long as the main message gets sent across. And the last part is that what are the benefits of exercise to the mind chattering? I say exercise exercise does induce certain physical changes to kind of help your brain grow. And when your brain grow, it is less prone to worry too much. It's less prone to chatter things that's going to make you go down the rabbit hole so much. But there is a caveat with that, is that certain exercises, because when you become too engrossed in yourself, for instance, running very, very long distance and doing nothing but running, you're going to be more aware of this brain chattering, and it can be distressing. The key is that when you know that that's happening, you can do something about it. Once you're aware, you can do something about it. Okay? And then that's what I would say with regards to brain chattering. Uh, right. Is it possible to make your why more interesting than one that is intrinsic, and how would that look like? Yes, it is possible. Because of today's nature of the talk, where I'm going to focus only on exercise, that's why I have worded it to focus on something very extrinsic. Generally, if I'm doing it for some certain situations, I actually focus on more intrinsic values. So what inspire you? What kind of person you want to be? Am I going to be like a hardworking person, a passionate person, inspiring, adventurous, trustworthy, so on and so forth? I actually help my clients to identify that word, and that word becomes their why in order to do whatever they want to do. I didn't touch on it in that manner in this talk because it's specifically on exercise, and usually exercise we use the extrinsic why, but they both function as the same thing, as a idea that you hold on to that's going to guide you towards what you want to do. All right. I think that's the last of the questions.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Do you have any comments and so on? You can feel free to put in your chat box. It seems like, finding the why has been the constant thing that we talk about since the last session with John and Angela. They talk about whys too, and then today as well. So I think thank you so much, Dr. Eugene, for the time spent with us. This is one thing that stood up for me in this session, is that there's this alignment of finding my why and to also rewire my objective for exercise. Put it this way, is it okay if I say that I want to exercise to stay active, Dr. Eugene?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think
Okay.
that's okay. That sounds okay. It's not emotional, and being active could mean many things. And you, as long as you keep active as the main
Okay.
guy, then yeah, you can start
Okay.
planning goals in accordance to that. Then and then it's more likely to going to keep the resolution.
Right. So that's my objective. If you have discovered your objective, please put in the chat box. Don't use mine. Okay. So that you put your chat box and then you can encourage one another. Okay. All right. So that is for me, that I want to stay exercise, to stay active, and then break down achievable steps. Yeah. So that it will not be too overwhelming. So perhaps you can do that for this time while I'm trying to wrap up here. Okay, so put in the chat box what one thing that you can bring back with you after this session. All right.